What's going on, everyone? I'm back, and today we are finishing up our look at the 2018 fantasy football positional ranking, specifically looking at the tight ends. I've got my top 15 guys for you this season, so let's get right into it. The number one guy on this list is, to no one's surprise, Rob Gronkowski. And with Gronk, we all know the MO. Look, he has an injury history, but discounting injuries, when he's on the field, he's a dominant force. Look at what he did last year. Other than a game suspension, he was the number one tight end. Now, you could go ahead, maybe make an argument for Travis Kelce, but the difference here for me is one of those guys kept his Hall of Fame quarterback. The other is going to be playing with a new, pretty much rookie quarterback that didn't get a chance to see any playing time last year. So for that reason, I give the nod here to Rob Gronkowski. We don't predict injuries, so assuming he is healthy, I still see him being a dominant force. Julian Edelman is going to be gone for 4 games. That'll up Gronk's play time and his targets and his looks and his red zone looks, especially in those 4 games. So keep an eye out on that. Obviously here the big thing will be, what will Tom Brady look like? Is his play going to decline? And while I do think his play will start to decline, we will see some signs, I still think by far Gronk is the best option on that offense, and for that reason he is the number one tight end for this year. Coming in at number 2, I have got Travis Kelce, and this one has an asterisk next to it, and I know what you're thinking. It's way too early with the number 2 guy for someone to have an asterisk next to their name. But I will say this, with Kelce, the main reason here is with him losing his quarterback, Alex Smith, and now having to play with pretty much a rookie quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, a guy that's known for having a big arm, athletic, not necessarily maybe the best combination, and he's getting his first taste of NFL action this year in a very tough defensive division. Now, I will say maybe a little bit offsetting that is the fact that a good tight end can really be the security blanket and a new quarterback's best friend, which Travis Kelce can definitely do that. In my opinion, he is the best pass catcher on that Kansas City offense, and Patrick Mahomes will look to him often. So for that reason, having those two things pretty much balancing themselves out, I do think when it's all said and done, some of his production will dip, but it won't be to a point where it's going to affect his ranking that severely. For that reason, I've got him staying steady here at number 2. No major injury histories. He's been getting better and better for the most part, year in and year out, and I expect him to finish in the top 5 without a doubt. Next at number 3, I have got one of the fantasy tight end darlings of last year in Zach Ertz. And with Ertz, you can make the case here that he should be the number 2 guy. I wouldn't be upset if you did, because all reports coming out of Philadelphia is that Carson Wentz is going to be ready by week 1. And if that's the case, that's going to be a huge win for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I do expect, as usual, some type of Super Bowl hangover, which happens year in and year out. But even with that being said, while Carson Wentz was there last year, Zach Ertz was his favorite weapon by far. He saw those extremely valuable red zone looks as well, and I don't expect anything to change this year. He's still going to be the go-to guy for Carson Wentz. The big question is, will Carson Wentz hold up under center? If he does, I have plenty of faith in Zach Ertz that he should continue his trajectory on from last year. Some of his backups, like a Trey Burton, also not there, so I think his usage will be on the high end. For that reason, I like Zach Ertz to finish in the top 5. Coming in at number 4, I have got Greg Olsen. And Olsen was a guy that went 3 years consecutively for a tight end having over 1,000 yards receiving, which is extremely impressive. Unfortunately, last year was not the case because he was sidelined by an injury pretty much for the majority of the year and letting down fantasy fans all around. But you know, if we look at Greg Olsen's history, he doesn't have a big injury history, and I do think he will be able to go ahead, bounce back from this relatively well, and when he is healthy, no matter what anyone tells you, he is the favorite weapon of Cam Newton. He is the most reliable guy there. I think he has the best hands on that team, and he just has that chemistry with Cam Newton that no one else really has quite yet. DJ Moore still relatively too young. Devin Funches, not as consistent, and Christian McCaffrey, not necessarily that middle of the field, long play kind of option. So for that reason, Greg Olsen is still the best option of that Carolina Panthers offense. I will say, I do think it's going to be a struggle offensively for the Panthers, but I do expect Greg Olsen to go ahead, give you over 1,000 yards receiving, and when it comes to tight ends, that's all you can ask for because that's going to translate into a top 5 year. Coming in at number 5, I've got Kyle Rudolph, and in years past, Rudolph hasn't quite exactly been one of these flashiest tight end names, kind of maybe a little bit more under the radar, a guy that you get in later rounds that can still be serviceable, put up some decent numbers every other week, maybe has more touchdown potential than anything else. But this year should be different, and I myself, like many others, do think that Kirk Cousins will be the reason why, because with the Vikings, I think Cousins is the best quarterback they've had over there in a while, and Cousins is a guy that likes to air it out, which will help all of the pass catchers, but he's also proven to have good chemistry with his tight ends. Looking at Jordan Reed, even though that has been somewhat limited, I think Kyle Rudolph will benefit from Kirk Cousins, just like all the other receivers. And for that reason, I like to go ahead, elevate him into my top 5, thinking that Kyle Rudolph is going to be that guy that really clicks with Kirk Cousins and goes ahead, finally breaks through this year. Next at number 6, I have got Jordan Reed. And before everyone goes ahead and rips my head off for having Reed almost as a top 5 guy, let me explain, because it was only a couple years back before Reed went on this injury-plagued streak of his that he was mentioned as a top 3, top 4 tight end. He definitely has the skill set. He's definitely got the talent. But when it comes down to it, he has been injury-plagued, unfortunately. And much like I would compare him to a guy like Keenan Allen last year, that many people didn't want to go ahead and draft because in back-to-back years, he had gotten injured, gone on the IR, and as talented as he is, he wasn't reliable. I think that Jordan Reed can have that type of bounce back from an injury-plagued season that Keenan Allen had last year. And as we all know, if Jordan Reed is healthy, he is a bona fide stud. Now, the thing that I really believe is going to set this over the top is the fact that Alex Smith will be in Washington. He has had, from his days in San Francisco to Kansas City, and now to Washington, hopefully going to have that continued success with this tight end, because when it was in San Francisco, it was Vernon Davis. When it was in Kansas City, it was Travis Kelce. Now, hopefully, it'll be Jordan Reed. I will say the one thing that does worry me here is that Vernon Davis also happens to be in Washington, so maybe some of that chemistry will dip down some of Jordan Reed's numbers. But if they're both healthy, Reed is the number 1 unquestioned tight end. I will, however, go ahead and say if you draft Jordan Reed, maybe having Vernon Davis as a backup tight end wouldn't be a bad option, because, again, we don't want to plan for injuries, but if it does happen, Vernon Davis then, I think, becomes a top 10 tight end without a doubt.
Coming in at number 7, I've got Jimmy Graham, and for all of those Graham fans out there, this should be good news as he is joining the Green Bay Packers and, more importantly, Aaron Rodgers. And the reason I think it should be an exciting moment is because this is going to be the closest in terms of what it was like when Graham was back with the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees and having that extremely accurate quarterback. And if we all remember, the last time he was in New Orleans, he was dominating. He was a top 2, top 3 tight end in conversation with Rob Gronkowski. He gets a more accurate and just as athletic Aaron Rodgers. And now with Jordy Nelson gone, there will be some more opportunities there. I like Jimmy Graham in the end zone, and we've seen it before. Times when Aaron Rodgers has had a lot of success have been times when he's had a good tight end. The Martellus Bennett situation didn't really work out last year, but I do think Jimmy Graham is a different type of beast, and he's going to finish, when it's all said and done, close to a top 5 tight end.
Next at number 8, I have got Delanie Walker, and Delanie Walker isn't really one of these sexy tight end names that you're going to get excited, start jumping up and down for when you go ahead and draft him, but he is, to some degree, a very reliable option. And the reason that I say that is because he is, without a doubt in my mind, the favorite receiving option for Marcus Mariota in that Tennessee offense. So for that reason, he does have that upside from time to time. As far as stats are concerned, however, you pretty much know what to expect from him if you look at the last 2 years. Right around 800 yards receiving, and the difference maker is going to be those touchdowns that are posted. Last year, 3. The year before that, 7. And the reason I'm a little bit skeptical of Delanie Walker this year is because I really do think that the Titans are going to focus their attention on the running game and have that be a priority. So I am knocking him down a little bit for that. I could see him finishing right at the top 10 mark, or possibly right outside it, depending on how the progression of Marcus Mariota also goes along with that running game. Next at number 9, I have got Jack Doyle. And the narrative with Doyle is an interesting one because I think there's one big pro here and also one slightly concerning con. And obviously the pro here is the return of Andrew Luck and how he's going to re-energize that offense once he returns. And to me, honestly, every single pass catcher there becomes individually better by at least 200 yards when Luck returns. Also, probably by a touchdown or two as well. Now, on the con side, to me, is obviously the addition of Eric Ebron into that offense. The good news, however, is the Colts do have somewhat of a history with running 2 tight ends. Think Dwayne Allen a few years back. And Jack Doyle is still listed as the number 1 tight end. But it is important to keep in mind, even when Dwayne Allen was there, while he did serve mostly as a blocking tight end, he still did take away some red zone opportunities for Jack Doyle. So I do think his touchdowns will be limited a bit more, but when it's all said and done, he will be a top 10 tight end. Next at number 10, I've got Evan Engram, and maybe a little too low for some people, but I do want to remind folks what Engram did last year will likely never happen again in terms of the situation. And what do I mean by that? Well, pretty much all those stats that he was able to put together took the Giants needing to have their wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 all get hurt for an extended period of time, where that opened the door for Evan Engram to go ahead, build that chemistry with Eli Manning, and then get all of those opportunities that he did. On top of that, they didn't really have a running game to lean on, so they had to rely on Eli Manning and his arm. Now, fast forward to this year, Odell Beckham is back healthy. You're going to go ahead, have Sterling Shepard back, and huge addition of Saquon Barkley, who's going to take away targets from everyone on that offense. And even though Evan Engram, had a good 2017, showed flashes, I do think his share is going to go ahead and decrease. I don't think the ceiling that he had last year, especially after all those injuries, is there again. The one saving grace for me is that we have seen that he does have the potential. He is a gifted, talented tight end, and he does have the potential, when it is all said and done, to be a top 10 tight end guy. Coming in at number 11, I've got Austin Seferian-Jenkins. And ASJ was a guy that had a very respectable year last year with the Jets team that surprised a lot of folks. Now, transition to 2018, he goes ahead and replaces Mercedes Lewis for a Jaguars team that is obviously led by their defense, but it'll be in situations where, honestly, with the departure of Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson, I think ASJ becomes a valid option for that offense in the passing game. Obviously, that offense is going to go through Leonard Fournette mostly in the running game, but when it all comes down to it, if it's in the red zone as well, I like ASJ as a target, big body guy, and I think he is honestly more proven than the majority of the pass catchers on that Jaguars team. And if I had to label a sleeper throughout this entire list that can go ahead and surprise a lot of people, ASJ is my pick without a doubt. Coming in at number 12, I've got Tyler Eifert. And unfortunately for Eifert, the last couple of years have been somewhat similar to what Jordan Reed has gone through, as they've been injury plagued. Now, the good news is we do know when healthy, Eifert is the best passing option right behind AJ Green for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's a great big body in the red zone, and he's the best tight end option as well. I think that entire Cincinnati offense will go ahead and get better this year. I expect a huge bounce back a year from all of them. Now, the one concerning thing that I will admit is, in Eifert's absence, Tyler Kroft was a guy that went ahead and stepped up in a big way. So whether Eifert is healthy or not, I do expect Tyler Kroft to still stay a part of that offense. So from that perspective, I do think he's going to go ahead and take away some of the value of a Tyler Eifert if he hadn't gotten injured these last couple of years. But when it's all said and done, I really do like the value of a Tyler Eifert in later rounds. If he can stay healthy, he should be a top 10 tight end based on talent alone. Next at number 13, I've got George Kittle. And admittedly so, the inclusion of Kittle right out of the gate, I'm going to say, is based a lot on optimism for what this 49ers offense could potentially be, and it's based on a small sample size from what we saw at the end of the year. Now, that's the main concern here. The good news is, I do think Jimmy Garoppolo is the real deal. He's got that experience from Belichick, from Brady, and we saw him succeed last year. It was versus tough teams, and the 49ers had nothing to play for, so, he still went out and performed. Now, I will say it will be a little tough in this division, which I think is stacked defensively, but when it's all said and done, George Kittle can be had for a very decent price later on in rounds, and if you go ahead and don't really worry about the tight end position, I think he can be a serviceable guy that you're probably going to be relying on him for his touchdown potential, since the 49ers did go ahead and add some more weapons at the wide receiver position. Next, number 14, I've got Charles Clay, and the situation with Clay is an interesting one because I feel like if he was on a better offense, he could be a dominant force. We saw it last year in spurts with Tyrod Taylor there, but unfortunately, I think the offense for the Bills in 2018 could be one of the worst in the league. And it starts with the quarterback situation, as it's led by, for now, A.J. McCarron. And I have absolutely zero faith that A.J. McCarron can be a serviceable NFL quarterback. And right behind him, it's Josh Allen, who I personally had ranked as the worst rookie quarterback coming into this draft. So honestly, not too much reason for optimism when it comes to the signal callers who are going to dictate that passing attack. The one good piece of news is that, to me, Charles Clay is pretty much the best pass catcher that the Bills have left. Kelvin Benjamin, to me, not that reliable. So I got to go with Clay and say he's the number one guy to me in that passing attack. And he's going to be that safety blanket, that security blanket for whoever emerges as the quarterback on top of that.
Coming in at number 15, and the last name on this list, I have got Trey Burton of the Bears. And look, I know what I've said about the Bears offense this year. I don't want to do anything with it, primarily because of Mitchell Trubisky, and I'm not backing down from that. The only reason I have Trey Burton on this list is actually twofold. First and foremost, he was paid very handsomely, like a top tight end in this league by the Bears, and for that reason, I think they're going to do everything possible in their power to go ahead and justify that move, which is going to be feed him as many targets as possible. And the second reason being, he was one of the two big name pass catchers that they signed along with Allen Robinson. The difference here is, however, Trey Burton is coming off of, an injury-free season, and I anticipate him to be more season ready than an Allen Robinson. For that reason, I do think he will get opportunities, and those opportunities will translate into decent fantasy numbers. So with this, we come to a conclusion of the series of player positional rankings in the 2018 fantasy football season, specifically for the tight ends in this video. And as always, let me hear it in the comment section. Let me know what you guys thought, any causes for concern, any guys that I listed too high, too low that I omitted. Along with that, if you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in future videos.